My son inherited $27 million and changed the locks on me. I stood outside the penthouse I'd called home for 15 years, holding my single suitcase, watching Derek through the floor-to-ceiling windows. He was laughing with his fiancée, Amber, champagne glasses raised in celebration. The doorman wouldn't meet my eyes. "Sorry, Mr. Miller. New orders." I could have made a scene, could have demanded entry, could have reminded Derek that I'd raised him alone after his mother died, worked 3 jobs to put him through Northwestern, paid for that MBA he loved waving around. Instead, I smiled, because what Derek didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this moment longer than he'd been alive. And sometimes the quietest man in the room holds all the cards. Let me back up. 3 days earlier, Derek's grandmother, my mother-in-law, had passed away at 91. Maria was old-school wealthy, the kind who came from Polish aristocracy before the war and never let anyone forget it. She'd always looked down on me, the immigrant who'd married her daughter. But Maria had one rule: family takes care of family. Her will left Derek everything: the penthouse, the stocks, the cash, $27,200,000.43. I know because I helped him count it. "This changes everything, Dad," Derek said, scrolling through the bank transfer on his phone. "We can finally do something significant with our lives." Our lives. Like the past 30 years of mine didn't count. Derek had graduated Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management 2 years ago with his MBA, and a head full of ideas about disrupting traditional industries. He'd been living in the penthouse since college, working at various startups that folded within months. Every failure was someone else's fault: bad timing, insufficient funding, partners who didn't understand his vision. Amber McKenzie had been his girlfriend for 8 months. Former McKinsey consultant, 29 years old, the kind of woman who could calculate your net worth during a handshake. She'd taken a leave of absence to help Derek launch what she called his hospitality empire. "The food service industry is ripe for complete transformation," she'd told me over dinner the week before. "Ghost kitchens, AI-driven customer analytics, sustainable supply chains. It's all about scalable solutions and data optimization." I'd nodded politely, spooning my soup. "Sounds complicated." "It's the future, Stefan." She always used my first name, never Dad. Derek's concepts are revolutionary. Multiple revenue streams, optimized delivery logistics, customer acquisition funnels. We're talking about building the next billion-dollar unicorn. "What kind of food will you serve?" Amber and Derek exchanged a look. "That's not really the point," Derek said. "It's about the platform, the technology, the scalability." I kept eating my soup. "So you don't cook?" "Cooking is old school," Amber said. "We're building systems, infrastructure. This isn't about making pierogies in some grandmother's kitchen." The insult was casual, delivered with a smile. My grandmother's pierogi recipes had fed Derek through college when his meal plan ran out. But Amber was right about one thing: it wasn't about cooking anymore. For them. The morning after the inheritance cleared, I found Derek and Amber in the penthouse kitchen, spreading architectural plans across the marble island. The Viking range, $18,000, barely used since Derek preferred ordering delivery, was covered with business documents. "Dad." "Perfect timing," Derek said without looking up. "We need to talk." Amber was wearing a Hermes Birkin bag like it was casual Tuesday attire, $75,000 hanging off her shoulder while she marked up floor plans with a Mont Blanc pen. "We've made a decision about the future," Derek continued, "about the family image, about what we want to represent." I poured myself coffee from the machine, a La Marzocco that cost more than most people's cars. "I'm listening." "You've worked hard your whole life," Derek said, still not meeting my eyes. 30 years in food service, restaurants, catering, whatever. But Amber's consulting firm did an analysis of our family brand positioning. Amber opened her laptop. MacBook Pro, latest model, probably worth more than my truck. "The optics are challenging," she said, sliding into full consultant mode. "When we pitch to investors, when we network with industry leaders, when we're featured in Forbes or TechCrunch, the narrative needs to be clean." "Clean," I repeated. "You're a wonderful man," Derek said, finally looking at me. "But you're blue collar, a cook. And that's not the image we need for Miller Hospitality Concepts." "Miller Hospitality Concepts? Our company." Derek's chest puffed with pride. "We're launching next month. Premium ghost kitchen network with AI-driven customer experience optimization." I set down my coffee cup. "You're starting a food business." "We're starting a technology business that happens to involve food delivery," Amber corrected. "Completely different paradigm." "And you think I'd hurt that?" Derek sighed. Dad, you're 68. 58. 58. You're from a different generation. This is about innovation, disruption, venture capital, board meetings with people who went to Harvard and Stanford. We need to project success, sophistication, forward-thinking leadership. Amber nodded. It's not personal, Stefan. It's strategic brand management. I looked around the kitchen, at the plans for their ghost kitchens, at their matching Patagonia vests and confidence, at the complete certainty that they understood how the world worked. So what are you saying? Derek straightened his shoulders. We think it's time for you to find your own place. Start fresh. Maybe retirement, maybe a little consulting work. We'll help with the transition, of course. You want me to move out? We want you to build your own life, Amber said gently, independent of Derek's emerging success. I nodded slowly. When? Today would be ideal, Derek said. We have investors flying in from San Francisco tomorrow. First impressions matter. That's when I knew. This wasn't about business strategy or brand management. This was about shame. My son was ashamed of me, of what I did, of who I was. And that's when I stopped being his father and started being his competitor. The phone call came at 11:30 that night. I was in my new studio apartment, 400 square feet above a dry cleaner in Rogers Park, everything I could find on short notice. The contrast wasn't lost on me. Derek celebrating in his marble and glass penthouse while I stared at water stains on a popcorn ceiling. Dad, it's Derek. I figured. Look, I know today was difficult, but I wanted to explain the bigger picture, what we're really trying to accomplish here. I sat on the edge of my bed, a twin mattress I'd bought that afternoon from a discount furniture store. I'm listening. You have to understand, this isn't just about me anymore. It's about generational wealth, building something sustainable, creating a legacy that goes beyond just getting by. Getting by? Derek's voice shifted, taking on that lecturing tone he'd perfected in business school. You've spent 30 years working for other people, taking orders, following recipes, collecting paychecks. There's nothing wrong with that. We need people who execute other people's visions. But that's not leadership. I could hear Amber in the background encouraging him, probably coaching him through this conversation like everything else. Amber helped me understand something important, Derek continued. Success in the modern economy requires strategic thinking, systems thinking, the ability to see opportunities that other people miss. What kind of opportunities? Technology integration, market disruption, scalable business models. When we launch Miller Hospitality Concepts, we're not just starting another restaurant company. We're revolutionizing how food delivery works in America. I looked out my window at the empty street below. How? AI-powered customer analytics, predictive ordering algorithms, dynamic pricing models based on real-time demand. We're building the Uber of food service. Uber of food service. Exactly. And that requires a certain image. When I'm speaking at industry conferences, when we're profiled in Fast Company, when venture capitalists are evaluating our Series A potential, the story has to be compelling. And my story isn't compelling? Derek paused. I could hear him choosing his words carefully. Your story is traditional. Immigrant works hard, provides for family, builds modest life. That's admirable. But it's not scalable. It's not innovative. It's not the kind of narrative that attracts 40 million in venture funding. 40 million? Our target for Series A. Amber's connections at McKinsey have introduced us to 3 major VC firms. Sequoia's interested. Andreessen Horowitz wants a meeting. But they're investing in the future, not the past. Amber's voice came through clearly now. Derek had put me on speaker. Stefan, this is really about helping Derek step into his full potential. He's brilliant, but he needs space to establish his own identity, his own brand. His own brand. Successful entrepreneurs are storytellers, she continued. They craft narratives that inspire investors, customers, employees. Derek's narrative is young visionary from successful family leverages cutting-edge technology to transform industry. Your narrative is different. Different how? Derek took the phone back. Dad, you're an embarrassment. The words hit like cold water. Simple, direct, final. I didn't want to put it that bluntly, he continued. But Amber thinks honesty is the best approach. You represent everything we're trying to move beyond. Blue-collar thinking, small-scale operations, risk-averse decision-making, manual labor instead of intellectual capital. Manual labor. Cooking, serving, cleaning, it's all manual labor. Important work, sure, but not leadership work, not visionary work. When people Google my family background, I need them to see success, not survival. I was quiet for a long moment. Outside, a delivery truck rumbled past, probably bringing supplies to one of the dozen restaurants within walking distance of my apartment. Dad, are you there? I'm here. Look, this doesn't have to be permanent. Once we're established, once we've raised our Series B and scaled to 50 markets, maybe there's a place for you in the organization. Entry level, obviously. You could learn the modern food service industry from the ground up. Entry level? Regional kitchen manager, maybe. Or supplier relations coordinator. Something that uses your experience but doesn't require strategic decision-making. Amber's voice again. The key is positioning this as an opportunity for personal growth. Stefan, you could finally learn how successful businesses actually operate. Modern inventory management, customer relationship systems, profit optimization strategies. Because I've never seen how successful businesses operate. Not at this scale, Derek said. And not with this level of sophistication. Dad, the restaurants you've worked at, neighborhood places, family operations, small-time catering, that's completely different from what we're building. We're talking about 1,000 ghost kitchens across 30 states, 15 million customer interactions per month, AI-driven everything. AI-driven everything. Machine learning algorithms that predict customer preferences before customers know them themselves. Dynamic menu optimization based on real-time ingredient costs. Automated kitchen workflows that eliminate human error. I stood up and walked to my window. Below, a food delivery driver was checking addresses, trying to find the right apartment building. Young kid, probably working multiple apps at once to make rent. You've done good work, Derek said, his tone softening into something resembling pity. Honest work. But it's 2024, Dad. The world has moved on. This isn't your grandmother's pierogi kitchen anymore. And there it was. The line that revealed everything. My grandmother's pierogi kitchen fed you through college, I said quietly. That's not the point. That's exactly the point, Derek. Dad, I'm trying to help you understand. I hung up. Then I sat back down on my twin bed and started making a list. The next morning, I visited 3 places Derek had never seen. First, my safety deposit box at Chase Bank on North Michigan Avenue. Inside were documents dating back to 1995, the year I'd arrived in Chicago with 2 suitcases and $300. Legal papers for companies Derek didn't know existed. LLC formations, partnership agreements, incorporation certificates. Second, a storage unit in Schaumburg I'd rented 15 years ago. 47 bankers' boxes, meticulously organized and labeled. Financial records, contracts, correspondence, permits. The paper trail of everything I'd built while Derek was growing up, thinking his father was just a cook. Third, my lawyer's office. Marcus Johnson had been handling my business affairs since 2001. African-American, Harvard Law graduate, partner at one of Chicago's most respected corporate firms. The kind of lawyer who charged $800 an hour and was worth every penny. Stefan, he said, shaking my hand. I heard about your family situation. How are you holding up? I'm ready to move forward. Marcus gestured to the chair across from his desk. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of downtown Chicago that probably cost more per square foot than Derek's penthouse. What do you need? I placed a folder on his desk. Activation protocols for all dormant entities. Full disclosure preparation. And I want to accelerate the James Beard nomination. Marcus opened the folder, scanning documents he'd helped me create over the past 2 decades. You're sure about this? Once we activate these structures, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle. I'm sure. The timing is interesting. May 15th, that's only 8 weeks away. The James Beard Committee usually requires 6 months minimum for outstanding achievement nominations. They'll make an exception. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Because of the nomination letter from Thomas Keller? I nodded. Thomas Keller, the French laundry per se, arguably America's most respected chef, had written a 5-page letter nominating me for the James Beard Outstanding Achievement in Food Service Innovation Award. We'd been friends for 12 years, ever since I'd helped him solve a supply chain crisis that would have closed 3 of his restaurants. And Daniel Hum is co-signing, I added, along with Jose Andres and David Chang. Marcus whistled softly. That's a murderer's row of endorsements. What about the business disclosure requirements? Full transparency, revenue figures, location counts, partnership agreements, everything. All 562 locations? All 562. Marcus leaned back in his chair. Stefan, are you absolutely certain Derek has no idea about any of this?
He thinks I'm a blue-collar cook who works for other people. And Amber, the McKinsey consultant? She thinks I'm an embarrassment to their brand.
Marcus shook his head slowly. They're about to get a very expensive education. I pulled out another document. There's one more thing. I want to make Derek an offer. What kind of offer? Employment. Entry-level position at one of our kitchens. Minimum wage, part-time hours. He can learn the business from the ground up. Marcus looked at me carefully. You're serious. Completely serious. He wants to understand how successful food businesses operate. This is his chance. And if he refuses, then he refuses. But the offer will be public, on record, in front of witnesses. Marcus began making notes. I'll need to coordinate with the James Beard Foundation, prepare the disclosure documentation, activate the holding company structures. When do you want this to happen? Awards ceremony is May 15th. I want everything ready by May 1st. That's aggressive, but doable. Marcus paused. Stefan, can I ask why now? You've kept this quiet for 25 years. You could have continued indefinitely.
I stood up and walked to the window. Below, the streets were full of people hurrying to meetings, chasing deals, building careers, most of them working for someone else, just like Derek thought I did. My son thinks success means having ideas, having degrees, having the right narrative for investors. And you think success means something different? I think success means building something real, something that lasts, something that creates value for actual people, not just presentations for venture capitalists. Marcus nodded. And you think Derek needs to learn that lesson? I think Derek needs to learn respect. I turned back to face him. 30 years ago, I came to this country with nothing. I worked dishwasher shifts, prep cook jobs, anything I could find. Derek sees that as failure, as something to be ashamed of. But it wasn't failure. No, it was education. I sat back down. Every job taught me something. Every kitchen showed me how the business worked. Every mistake cost me money I couldn't afford to lose. That's how you really learn. And Derek hasn't learned that way. Derek learned from textbooks and case studies. He knows theories about business, not truths about business. Marcus finished his notes. This is going to destroy his company, you know. Miller Hospitality Concepts won't survive the revelation. Good. And his relationship with Amber? That's up to him. Marcus closed the folder. I'll have everything ready by May 1st. But Stefan, once this starts, there's no controlling how it ends. I smiled. Marcus, I've been controlling how this ends for 25 years. Derek's first supplier problem started on a Tuesday. I knew because I was watching. Not directly. I'd learned long ago that the most effective moves happen from the shadows. But I had people, contacts, relationships built over 3 decades of actually working in the food service industry. Hey, Stefan, said Tony Ricci, calling from his office at Midwest Food Distribution. Your boy's been trying to source proteins for his ghost kitchen concept. Oh? Yeah. Wants to negotiate volume pricing for chicken breast, ground beef, salmon fillets, talking big numbers, says he's opening 50 locations in 6 months. I was sitting in my truck outside a McDonald's in Evanston, eating a quarter-pounder and reviewing spreadsheets. What did you tell him? Same thing I tell everyone. Show me your purchase orders, your credit references, your operational history. Kid's got attitude but no track record. No track record at all? Tony laughed. Stefan, you know how this works. I've got 800 restaurant clients across the Midwest. I know who pays on time, who knows quality standards, who understands logistics. Your son thinks he can walk in and demand wholesale pricing because he's got an MBA. What kind of attitude? Called me yesterday yelling about market manipulation. Says someone's interfering with his supplier relationships. Says he's being sabotaged by industry insiders who don't understand innovation. I took another bite of my burger. Sometimes the simplest food is the most satisfying. What do you think? I think his credit application shows 0 revenue, 0 operational experience, and 0 understanding of how food sourcing actually works. Also think his ordering projections are fantasy numbers. How so? He wants to move 12,000 pounds of chicken breast per week across 50 locations. That's 240 pounds per location per week. Either he's planning the world's smallest ghost kitchens or he has no idea what volume numbers mean. Derek's inexperience was showing. In business school, everything sounds scalable on paper. In reality, each location has capacity limits, storage requirements, staffing constraints. You can't just multiply theoretical numbers by theoretical locations and call it a business plan. Also, Tony continued. He's demanding 60-day payment terms for a startup with no credit history. That's not how supplier relationships work. What are normal terms for new customers? Cash on delivery until they establish payment history. Sometimes net 15 if they provide personal guarantees and banking references. I understood Derek's frustration. He was trying to launch a business with consumer expectations and enterprise assumptions. He expected supplier relationships to work like Amazon orders, point, click, delivered on schedule with favorable terms.
You going to work with him? Stefan, you know I respect your family, but business is business. I can't extend credit to customers who don't understand credit requirements. That afternoon, Derek called 4 more suppliers. By evening, he'd received similar responses from all of them. Not rejections exactly, just standard business requirements that felt insurmountable when you had ideas but no operational foundation. Amy Chen at Pacific Coast Seafood told him the same thing. Mr. Miller, we'd love to work with you. Just need to see your food handling permits, your receiving facility inspections, and your liability insurance documentation. Derek didn't have food handling permits, didn't have receiving facilities, didn't have liability insurance, had been planning to handle those details after we secure supplier partnerships. That's not how it works. The next morning I got another call. This one from Jennifer Martinez at Chicago Food Service Equipment. Stefan, your son's been trying to lease kitchen equipment for 50 locations. Walk-in coolers, prep tables, fryers, the whole setup. What kind of numbers? About $2 million in equipment. Wants to negotiate fleet pricing and extended payment terms. I was in my storage unit reviewing contracts from 2018. How extended? 90 days, no money down. Says his investors require careful cash flow management during the growth phase. What investors? Jennifer laughed. That's what I asked. Got a lot of talk about Series A funding and venture capital partnerships. But when I asked for financial references or guarantor agreements, suddenly it's all pending and in process. So you can't work with him? Stefan, you know the equipment leasing business. We need either cash deposits, credit guarantees, or established business references. Your son has a business plan and a lot of confidence. That's not enough? Would you lease $2 million in equipment to someone with a business plan and a lot of confidence? Point taken. By Thursday, Derek was desperate. I knew because Amber called me. Stefan, we need to talk. I was at Navy Pier, walking along the lakefront and thinking about the meeting I'd scheduled for tomorrow. I'm listening. Derek's having some challenges with supplier relationships. Industry vendors seem reluctant to work with new concepts. What kind of challenges? Credit requirements, payment terms, operational documentation, all the bureaucratic red tape that prevents innovation from moving quickly. I stopped walking and looked out at Lake Michigan. Bureaucratic red tape? Food handling permits, facility inspections, insurance requirements. All the legacy compliance structures that make it impossible for disruptive companies to compete with established players. Those aren't bureaucratic red tape, Amber. Those are basic business requirements.
Maybe in traditional industries, but we're building something different, something that transcends conventional operational models. You still need to buy food from suppliers. Of course, but we're approaching supplier relationships strategically, building partnerships based on mutual growth potential, not outdated credit scoring methodologies. I started walking again. How's that working out? Amber was quiet for a moment. We're exploring alternative sourcing strategies, such as direct relationships with producers, farm-to-table partnerships, cutting out traditional distribution middlemen who don't understand our business model. You're going to buy directly from farms? We're going to build a vertically integrated supply chain that eliminates unnecessary intermediaries. For 50 ghost kitchens across 6 states? For our initial market penetration, yes. I almost laughed.
Derek and Amber were planning to recreate the entire food distribution system because they couldn't get credit approval from existing distributors. Stefan, Amber continued, Derek respects your experience in the industry. We're wondering if you might be willing to help with supplier introductions. Help how? Vouch for us, provide references, maybe co-sign some initial contracts until we establish our own credit relationships. Now I did laugh. You want me to co-sign contracts for Miller Hospitality Concepts? Just temporarily. Once we're operational and generating revenue, we'll handle everything independently. What makes you think I have the kind of supplier relationships that would matter? Amber paused. Derek mentioned you've worked in food service for 30 years. You must know people. I know people. So you'll help? I sat down on a bench facing the lake. Let me think about it.
How long do you need? Give me until next week.
After I hung up, I called Marcus Johnson. Marcus, they want me to co-sign supplier contracts. Perfect. How do you want to handle it? Set up a meeting, all the major suppliers, all at once. Let them meet the real Stefan Miller. When? Monday morning, conference room at the Marriott downtown. Tell them it's about a new partnership opportunity. And Derek? Tell Derek I want to introduce him to my industry contacts. Father-son business meeting. Marcus chuckled. This should be interesting. Marcus, this is going to be educational. Derek found me at Lou's Diner on Saturday morning. I'd been eating breakfast there every weekend for 12 years. Same booth, same order, same waitress. Scrambled eggs, wheat toast, coffee black. Simple food, cooked right, served by people who knew their jobs. Dad. I looked up from my newspaper. Derek was wearing his weekend uniform. Patagonia fleece, dark jeans, Allbirds sneakers. The casual outfit probably cost more than most people spend on work clothes for a month. Derek, have a seat. He slid into the booth across from me, looking around the diner with barely concealed distaste. Cracked vinyl seats, Formica tables, fluorescent lighting that had seen better decades. Not exactly the kind of place where future unicorn founders usually held business meetings. Coffee? Asked Rita, the waitress who'd been working this section since the Clinton administration. Ah, just water, Derek said. Filtered, if you have it. Rita looked at him like he'd asked for champagne. Tap okay? Sure, fine. She poured his water from a plastic pitcher and refilled my coffee cup. More toast, Stefan? I'm good, thanks. Derek waited until she walked away. So this is where you eat breakfast? Every Saturday for 12 years. It's very authentic. I went back to my newspaper. What do you need, Derek? Amber said you might be willing to help with our supplier situation. Might be. Look, I know things got heated on the phone last week, but this is business. Personal feelings aside, we could benefit from your industry relationships. I folded my paper and studied my son. What makes you think my relationships would help? You've been working in food service for 30 years. You must know distributors, suppliers, equipment companies. People trust you. Some do. So you'll make introductions? I'll do better than that. I'll arrange a meeting, Monday morning downtown. All the major suppliers you've been trying to work with. Derek's face lit up. Seriously? Seriously. Consolidated meeting, all your sourcing needs in one room, protein suppliers, produce distributors, equipment leasing, everything. Dad, that's incredible. Amber's going to be so relieved. I sipped my coffee. She's worried? She's frustrated. Says the supplier approval process is unnecessarily complicated. Too much bureaucracy, not enough focus on growth potential. Growth potential? Our business model is scalable in ways these traditional companies don't understand. They're thinking small-scale, location-by-location expansion. We're thinking platform-level disruption. Rita appeared with my check. $8.47, same as always. Derek reached for his wallet, but I waved him off. Platform-level disruption, I repeated, leaving a $5 tip. Exactly. Once we prove the concept in Chicago, we can replicate it in any major metropolitan market. The supplier relationships we build here become the foundation for nationwide expansion. We walked outside together. Derek had parked his Porsche Taycan, $185,000, leased, next to my 2019 Ford F-150 with 127,000 miles. The contrast wasn't subtle. Derek, can I ask you something? Sure. Do you know what I actually do for work? He paused, hand on his car door. You work in restaurants, cooking, managing, whatever. Whatever. Dad, I didn't mean it like that. I respect the work you do. It's just different from what Amber and I are building. How is it different? Scale, technology integration, strategic thinking. You work in individual locations, dealing with day-to-day operations. We're building systems that can operate across multiple markets simultaneously. I nodded slowly. So you think I don't understand systems? I think you understand restaurant operations, but that's not the same as understanding business strategy. Business strategy. Supply chain optimization, customer acquisition costs, unit economics, market penetration analysis, the kind of strategic framework thinking they teach at Kellogg. I got into my truck and rolled down the window. Derek, you're going to learn something interesting on Monday. What? The difference between theoretical knowledge and practical knowledge. What do you mean? I started the engine. See you Monday morning, 9 a.m., Marriott downtown, conference room B. Dad, what exactly are you planning? I smiled and put the truck in drive. An education. By Monday morning, Derek and Amber had launched their counteroffensive. The first article appeared in Chicago Food and Wine magazine. Next-gen entrepreneurs revolutionize ghost kitchen concept. Full-page spread featuring Derek and Amber in the empty penthouse kitchen, surrounded by architectural plans and laptop screens. Miller Hospitality Concepts represents the future of food service, Amber was quoted saying. We're building technology-first solutions that eliminate the inefficiencies of traditional restaurant operations. The article continued. Derek Miller, 29, brings fresh perspective to an industry his family has worked in for decades. Unlike legacy food service operators focused on single-location thinking, Miller Hospitality leverages AI-driven analytics to optimize everything from menu selection to delivery logistics. I read it on my phone while sitting in my truck outside the Marriott. The photography was professional,
Derek looking thoughtful while pointing at tablet screens, Amber explaining workflow diagrams to an attentive journalist. Our competitive advantage is systematic thinking, Derek explained in the article. Previous generations of food service entrepreneurs relied on intuition and experience. We rely on data and strategic frameworks. Previous generations, like that was ancient history instead of last week. The second article ran in Crane's Chicago Business. MBA Duo targets $40 million Series A for Ghost Kitchen platform. This one focused on the investment potential, the scalability narrative, the disruption angle. Traditional food service companies are constrained by legacy operational models, the article quoted Amber. They think location by location, recipe by recipe, customer by customer. We think in terms of platform architecture and network effects.
There was a sidebar about Derek's entrepreneurial pedigree and family background in food service,
but the focus was entirely forward-looking. The innovative concepts, the technology integration, the venture capital interest. Not one mention of Stephen Miller. By Tuesday morning, they'd been featured in 3 more publications. Food Business magazine ran a piece called Millennial Entrepreneurs Bring Silicon Valley Thinking to Chicago Food Scene. Built in Chicago profiled them in their Startup Spotlight series. Even Forbes.com picked up the story for their 30 under 30 inches consideration. Derek was everywhere suddenly, speaking at Northwestern's entrepreneurship seminar, participating in a panel discussion about technology disruption in traditional industries at the University of Chicago Business School, giving interviews to podcasts about restaurant innovation and venture capital.
The ghost kitchen model represents a fundamental shift in how consumers interact with food brands, Derek explained on the Chicago Startup Stories podcast. Instead of being constrained by physical location and overhead costs, we can focus purely on customer experience optimization. Amber was equally visible, leveraging her McKinsey background to position herself as the strategic brains behind the operation. She spoke at a Women in Tech breakfast about bringing consulting methodologies to startup environments. She was quoted in Harvard Business Review's online edition about cross-industry innovation transfer. Most food service operators think tactically, she told HBR. We think strategically. They ask, how do we make this restaurant successful? We ask, how do we build a platform that makes thousands of restaurants obsolete? The momentum was building. Derek's LinkedIn followers jumped from 300 to 12,000 in 2 weeks. Amber started getting speaking invitations from business schools and industry conferences. Their company website, still showing coming soon for most sections, was getting thousands of visitors per week. More importantly, the PR campaign was working with investors. Derek mentioned in interviews that they'd received initial interest from multiple Tier 1 venture capital firms and were in advanced discussions regarding Series A funding. The narrative was compelling, young visionaries bringing modern thinking to outdated industry, leveraging family knowledge while transcending family limitations, building tomorrow's solutions with today's technology. It was also complete bullshit. On Thursday, I got a call from Jennifer Martinez at Chicago Food Service Equipment. Stefan, I saw the articles about your son's company. Impressive coverage. Very impressive. I have to ask, is there something I'm missing? The Derek Miller I met last week couldn't get credit approval for a toaster. But these articles make him sound like the next Steve Jobs. PR campaigns and business operations are different skill sets. So he still doesn't have equipment financing lined up? As far as I know, he still doesn't have equipment financing lined up. Jennifer laughed. This is going to be interesting on Monday. Very interesting. Friday morning brought the biggest article yet. Entrepreneur Magazine's online edition ran a feature called From Family Business to Unicorn Dreams, How One Chicago Startup is Redefining Food Service. The piece opened with Derek standing in front of the Chicago skyline, arms crossed, looking confident and determined. The photo caption read, "Derek Miller plans to transform his family's food service experience into a billion-dollar technology platform." Family's food service experience. Like it was a quaint little restaurant instead of, well, what it actually was. I called Marcus Johnson. "Marcus, have you seen the coverage? Hard to miss. Derek's having quite a media moment. How do you think that's going to look next week? After the James Beard announcement, it's going to look very, very different." I started my truck and headed toward downtown. "Marcus, I think we're ready to provide some additional context to this story." The real story? The real story. Sunday night, I spread everything across my kitchen table. 25 years of documents, financial records, partnership agreements, corporate structures that Derek had never imagined existed. The foundation, Midwest Culinary Solutions, LLC, incorporated in 1999, 2 years after Derek started kindergarten. Initial capital, $47,000 from a small business administration loan and my life savings. The expansion. By 2003, we owned and operated 17 ghost kitchens across Chicago, before anyone called them ghost kitchens, before food delivery apps existed. We were just commissary operations serving multiple restaurant brands from shared facilities. The innovation. In 2007, we developed the first integrated ordering system that allowed customers to order from multiple restaurant concepts through a single interface. Derek was in middle school, worried about basketball tryouts. I was building the technology framework that would later become every food delivery app in America. The scale? By 2015, Midwest Culinary Solutions controlled 562 kitchen locations across 31 states. Annual revenue? $280 million. We weren't the largest food service company in America, but we were the most innovative. And the most invisible. The partnerships. Exclusive supplier agreements with the distributors Derek couldn't get approved by. Strategic alliances with the equipment companies that wouldn't lease him a refrigerator. Joint ventures with the technology platforms he thought he was going to disrupt. I opened my laptop and pulled up the documents Marcus had prepared. Corporate structure diagram. Midwest Culinary Solutions owned controlling interests in 47 subsidiary companies. Those subsidiaries owned or leased kitchen facilities, equipment, technology platforms, and supplier relationships across the entire Midwest food service market. Financial summary. Personal net worth of $187 million. Company valuation of $450 million. Annual profit margins of 23%, higher than most restaurant companies, comparable to technology companies. Partnership portfolio, exclusive contracts with DoorDash for premium kitchen locations in 12 major markets. Strategic alliance with Uber Eats for technology integration and customer data sharing. Joint venture with Grubhub for last-mile delivery optimization. Real estate holdings. We owned the buildings housing 340 of our 562 kitchen locations. We owned the warehouses storing ingredients for 89% of our operations. We owned the delivery vehicles servicing 23 metropolitan markets. Technology infrastructure, proprietary ordering systems, processing 2.3 million customer interactions per month. AI-driven inventory management, reducing food waste by 34% compared to industry averages. Predictive analytics identifying customer preferences with 89% accuracy. The industry recognition. 2019, James Beard Award nomination for Outstanding Achievement in Food Service Innovation. 2021, National Restaurant Association, Innovator of the Year, finalist. 2023, Forbes, Private Company to Watch designation. All of it invisible to Derek. All of it built while he was growing up, thinking his father was just another restaurant employee. I pulled out my phone and started making calls. "Thomas, it's Stephen Miller. Are you available for a call tomorrow morning?" Thomas Keller, The French Laundry, 3 Michelin stars, James Beard Foundation Lifetime Achievement Award. We'd been friends since 2012, when I'd helped him solve a supply chain crisis that could have closed 3 restaurants. "Stephen, of course. How's the family situation?" "Educational. I'm activating everything Monday morning. Are you still willing to participate in the James Beard presentation?" "Absolutely. Daniel and Jose are confirmed as well. David's flying in from New York." "Perfect. And the nomination materials?" "Submitted last week. The foundation board meets Tuesday to finalize the award ceremony schedule. Next call, Jennifer Martinez at Chicago Food Service Equipment." Jennifer, the meeting's confirmed for tomorrow morning. Are you ready for the full disclosure? Stefan, I've been looking forward to this for 2 weeks. How much does Derek know? Derek knows we're meeting with suppliers to discuss his business needs. And he doesn't know you own the companies he's been trying to get credit from? He thinks I'm a cook who knows some people in the industry. This is going to be beautiful. Final call. Tony Ricci at Midwest Food Distribution. Tony, everything ready for tomorrow? Stefan, I've got the contracts printed, the credit applications ready, and the supplier network agreements prepared. How do you want to handle the reveal? Let Derek make his presentation first.
Let him explain his business model, his funding requirements, his growth projections. And then we'll provide some additional context about how the food service industry actually works. I gathered all the documents into organized folders, corporate structures in one pile, financial records in another, partnership agreements in a third, industry recognition certificates in a fourth, 25 years of building something real, something that created jobs, served customers, generated profits, and advanced the industry. Something Derek thought was blue-collar work. Tomorrow morning, he was going to learn the difference between having ideas and implementing ideas, between writing business plans and building actual businesses, between thinking you understand an industry and actually running an industry. I set my alarm for 6 a.m. and went to bed early. Monday morning, Conference Room B at the Marriott downtown was packed. Derek and Amber arrived at 8:45, looking sharp in business attire. Derek wore his best suit, navy Tom Ford, probably $3,000. Amber carried her Hermes bag and a leather portfolio that screamed McKinsey Consulting. They expected a small meeting with local suppliers. Instead, they walked into a conference room with 23 people representing every major food service company in the Midwest. "Dad, what is this?" "Industry meeting," I said, gesturing to empty chairs at the front of the room. "You wanted introductions to suppliers. These are your suppliers." Derek looked around the room nervously. "This is a lot of people. This is how business gets done at scale." Marcus Johnson stood at the head of the table, looking every inch the high-powered attorney he was. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning. We're here to discuss a significant business opportunity involving Miller Hospitality Concepts and the broader food service industry." Amber opened her portfolio and pulled out presentation materials. "Should I set up the projector?" "In a moment," Marcus said. "First, I think it would be helpful for Derek and Amber to explain their business concept to the group." Derek stood up, suddenly finding his confidence. This was familiar territory, the pitch, the vision, the disruption narrative he'd perfected over the past month. "Thank you all for being here. I'm Derek Miller, founder and CEO of Miller Hospitality Concepts. We're building a technology-first ghost kitchen platform that will revolutionize how Americans interact with food delivery." He clicked through slides on his laptop, displaying market research charts and growth projections. The ghost kitchen market is projected to reach $45 billion by 2027. Traditional restaurant models are constrained by legacy operational inefficiencies. We're creating a platform solution that leverages AI-driven analytics to optimize every aspect of the customer experience. Amber joined him at the front. "Our competitive advantage lies in systematic thinking and data-driven decision-making. While legacy operators rely on intuition and experience, we rely on strategic frameworks and technological innovation." Derek nodded enthusiastically. "We're seeking supplier partnerships for our initial 50-location rollout across 6 Midwest markets: protein sourcing, produce distribution, equipment leasing, technology integration, everything needed to build a scalable, profitable platform. Our funding model involves Series A venture capital, projected at $40 million, Amber continued. We're in advanced discussions with Tier 1 VC firms including Sequoia Capital and Andreessen Horowitz. Derek concluded, "We're not just starting another restaurant company. We're building the infrastructure for the future of food service. We're looking for suppliers who share our vision and want to be part of transforming this industry." Polite applause. Then silence. Tony Ricci from Midwest Food Distribution raised his hand. "Derek, you mentioned 50 locations across 6 markets. Can you provide more details about your operational timeline?" "Absolutely. We're targeting 3 months for market validation in Chicago, followed by rapid expansion to Milwaukee, Indianapolis, Detroit, St. Louis, and Minneapolis." 3 months from concept to operation? From concept to full operational capacity? Yes. Jennifer Martinez from Chicago Food Service Equipment spoke next. "What's your experience with kitchen operations management?" Derek glanced at Amber. "We're bringing fresh thinking to operational challenges. Our backgrounds in business strategy and consulting provide us with frameworks for systematic problem solving. But actual kitchen operations experience? We're focused on the strategic level. Operational execution will be handled by hired management teams. More silence. Marcus Johnson checked his notes. Derek, Amber, thank you for that presentation. I think it would be helpful now to provide some additional context about the food service industry in the Midwest. He gestured toward me. Stefan, would you like to share your perspective? I stood up slowly. Thank you, Marcus. I looked around the room at faces I'd known for decades, business partners, suppliers, competitors who'd become collaborators, people who'd built their careers in food service, not in conference rooms. Derek, you asked me what I actually do for work. Derek nodded, looking confused. I own this room. Silence.
Tony Ricci at Midwest Food Distribution has been my supplier partner for 18 years. We process $89 million in annual purchasing volume through his company. Tony nodded. Stefan's our largest client. Jennifer Martinez at Chicago Food Service Equipment has leased me approximately $12 million in kitchen equipment over the past 15 years. Jennifer smiled. Stefan's been our most reliable customer since 2008. Marcus Johnson has been my corporate attorney for 23 years, handling the legal structures for 47 subsidiary companies under the Midwest Culinary Solutions umbrella. Derek was staring at me. Midwest Culinary Solutions? The parent company for our 562 ghost kitchen locations across 31 states. Amber dropped her pen. 562 locations? Annual revenue of $280 million, net profit margins of 23%. Corporate valuation of $450 million. The room was completely quiet now. Derek, you wanted to build the future of food service. We built it 25 years ago. You wanted to create technology-first solutions. We developed integrated ordering systems in 2007, 3 years before Uber existed. You wanted to optimize supply chains and delivery logistics. We've been doing that since you were in elementary school. I walked to the front of the room and stood next to the projector screen still displaying Derek's business plan. Everything you described in your presentation, ghost kitchens, technology integration, multi-brand platforms, AI-driven analytics, we've been operating at scale for 2 decades. Derek found his voice. That's impossible. Tony, show him the contracts. Tony Ricci opened a folder and pulled out supplier agreements. Midwest Culinary Solutions has been our largest food distribution client since 2006. Here are the purchasing records.
Jennifer, show him the equipment leases. Jennifer Martinez produced a stack of documents. Equipment financing for 562 kitchen locations. All current, all guaranteed by Midwest Culinary Solutions corporate accounts. Marcus, show him the corporate structure. Marcus Johnson displayed an organizational chart on the projector. 47 subsidiary companies, all owned by Midwest Culinary Solutions, all managed by Stefan Miller as founding CEO and majority shareholder. Derek sat down heavily. This doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense, I said. You thought I was a blue-collar cook because that's what you wanted to think. It was easier than understanding what I actually built. Amber was frantically taking notes. Why didn't you tell us? You didn't ask. You assumed. You dismissed. You decided my work was embarrassing and outdated without ever finding out what my work actually was. I gestured to the room full of suppliers. These people have known me for decades. They've watched me build this company from 17 kitchens in Chicago to 562 locations across 31 states. They know my track record, my operational expertise, my financial performance. Derek looked around the room. So when I applied for supplier relationships, you were applying to work with companies that have been my business partners for 20 years. And when I couldn't get credit approval, you couldn't get credit approval because you have no operational experience, no revenue history, and no business relationships. You have a business plan and a PowerPoint presentation. Amber spoke quietly. The James Beard Foundation called our office last week. They said you've been nominated for an Industry Achievement Award. Outstanding Achievement in Food Service Innovation. The ceremony is May 15th. That's in 4 days. Yes. Derek looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Dad, what are you doing? I'm offering you a job. What? Entry-level position at one of our kitchens, minimum wage, part-time hours. You can learn how this business actually works, from the ground up. You're serious. Completely serious. Miller Hospitality Concepts isn't going to work, Derek. You don't have supplier relationships, you don't have operational experience, and you don't have funding for a reason. Venture capitalists invest in people who understand the industries they're trying to disrupt. Derek's voice was barely a whisper. You're destroying my company. Derek, you never had a company. You had an idea and a presentation. That's not the same thing. I looked around the room one more time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time this morning. Marcus will follow up with any specific business discussions. As people began filing out, Amber stood up. Stefan, this isn't over. Yes, it is. She grabbed Derek's arm. Come on.
We need to call the investors.
Derek didn't move. Amber, what investors? We don't have investors. We have meetings with investors. We have interest from investors. We don't have actual investors. Derek, I think you should leave, Derek said quietly. Amber stared at him. Excuse me? You heard him, I said. He thinks you should leave. Amber looked back and forth between Derek and me, then gathered her materials and walked out of the conference room. Derek and I sat alone at the conference table for several minutes. Finally, Derek spoke. The job offer. Is it real? It's real. Why? Because you're my son, and because it's time you learned how to build something instead of just talking about building something. Derek nodded slowly. When do I start? Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m., kitchen number 17, West Loop location. What will I be doing? Learning.
The James Beard Awards ceremony was held at the Lyric Opera House on May 15th. Derek was there, sitting in the audience, wearing his kitchen uniform from his first week at our West Loop location. Hairnet marks still visible on his forehead, hands showing the kinds of cuts and burns that come from learning knife skills and fryer operations the hard way. When they announced my name for the Outstanding Achievement in Food Service Innovation Award, Derek stood up and applauded. Amber wasn't there. She'd returned to McKinsey 3 days after our conference room meeting, taking a position in their London office. Pursuing new opportunities, according to her LinkedIn update. The series of funding for Miller Hospitality Concepts never materialized. Hard to explain to venture capitalists why your innovative concept already exists at scale, operated by someone with actual industry experience. Derek's apartment went back on the market. He moved into a studio in Pilsen,
close to the kitchen where he worked prep shifts 5 days a week, learning ingredient sourcing, inventory management, food safety protocols, all the blue-collar work he'd dismissed 6 months earlier. The engagement ring, $37,000, financed through a jewelry store payment plan, was returned for partial credit. Derek's media coverage disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. Hard to maintain thought leadership positions when your company doesn't exist and your fiancé moves to another continent. But something interesting happened during Derek's 3rd week in the kitchen. Dad, I need to show you something. We were in my truck after his evening shift, heading to dinner at Lou's Diner. Derek pulled out a notebook, the kind with graph paper, the kind serious cooks use for recipe development. I've been tracking waste patterns in our protein prep.
Chicken breast trimming generates about 12% waste, but if we adjust the cutting angle by 15 degrees, we can reduce that to 7%. I looked at the notebook. Detailed drawings, calculations, cost projections. 7% reduction across 562 locations represents approximately $430,000 in annual savings, Derek continued. You calculated that yourself? I calculated that myself. I smiled. That's business strategy. Derek nodded. That's business strategy. We sat in Lou's Diner, eating simple food and talking about operational improvements, real improvements, based on actual work, creating measurable value. Derek was learning the difference between having ideas and implementing ideas, and I was learning that respect isn't inherited. It's earned. One shift at a time.